There's an odd sense of anticipation as you prepare. Packing becomes a ritual of subtraction rather than addition. Every object is a question. Do I really need this? What would it be like to live without it? You set aside the phone, the watch, the bag of emergency snacks, and feel the gentle panic of vulnerability rising in your chest. Shoes become a luxury. Even a blanket feels decadent. You can't help but imagine what you might miss, but there's also the whisper of what you might find. Standing on the threshold of this new, old world, you look back once at the easy warmth, the glow of a screen, the illusion of safety. Then you step into the uncertain coolness ahead, every sound amplified, every breath a little sharper. You don't know what waits in the shadows, what difficulties or wonders will emerge, but the choice has been made. For 1 week, you will try to see the world and yourself through the eyes of someone who knew only the basics. Find shelter, seek food, survive the night, and greet the dawn with a mind uncluttered by anything artificial. It is not nostalgia that pushes you forward, but a hunger for understanding. You want to touch the world as it is, unmediated and unforgiving. To remember the patience required when there's no shortcut, no instant solution. You want to see what parts of you emerge when you're forced to rely on instincts dulled by routine. There is an excitement in embracing uncertainty, in the thought that, beneath all the layers of civilization, something old and resilient still endures. As you take those first steps, the world feels at once larger and more intimate. Every twig beneath your feet, every whisper of wind, matters in a way it never did before. There is fear, yes, but also a thrill in the unknown. You are stepping out of time, out of the soft trap of convenience, and into a story as ancient as humanity itself. And as the mouth of the cave yawns open, you realize that this experiment is not just about surviving a week. It's about discovering what survives inside you when the world you've always known falls silent. When the last light of day fades and the landscape melts into blue, you become sharply aware that you are truly alone. There is no familiar orange glow leaking in from the city, no neighbor's porch light, no tiny persistent blink of standby LEDs, nothing to mark the boundary between what is safe and what is simply unknown. The cave, which in daylight seemed like a strange adventure, now feels like an ancient mouth slowly closing around you. You sit in the darkness, aware of your heartbeat and your breath, each sound suddenly magnified in the absence of everything else. When the last light of day fades and the landscape melts into blue, you become sharply aware that you are truly alone. There is no familiar orange glow leaking in from the city, no neighbor's porch light, no tiny persistent blink of standby LEDs, nothing to mark the boundary between what is safe and what is simply unknown. The cave, which in daylight seemed like a strange adventure, now feels like an ancient mouth slowly closing around you. You sit in the darkness, aware of your heartbeat and your breath, each sound suddenly magnified in the absence of everything else. What if, one day, you suddenly decided to walk away from everything that defines your modern life? Your phone, your bed, your kitchen full of snacks and glowing appliances, your carefully calibrated climate control, and instead took shelter in the shadows of a cave deep within the wild. The idea, at first glance, sounds like the premise of a social experiment or an odd reality show. It raises an eyebrow, maybe a smirk, but there's something more compelling beneath the surface. Why would someone trade comfort for the damp chill of stone, exchange endless information for the uncertain flicker of fire, choose solitude over the constant buzz of notifications? The answer is not in the spectacle of suffering or in some desire to boast about discomfort. The answer, perhaps, lives in a quiet question many people secretly ask themselves. What have we lost in the rush to gain everything? In a world obsessed with progress, with apps promising ease and pills for every ache, there's a growing suspicion that, for all we've achieved, something simple and essential has slipped through our fingers. Maybe it's a longing for clarity, for the kind of challenges that shape not just muscles, but the mind. Maybe it's the pull of origins, the same force that draws us to old stories and to places untouched by highways or Wi-Fi signals. So what if you pressed pause on the endlessly streaming present and slipped for one raw week into the ancient rhythm of life in a cave? The decision doesn't come easily. Modern comforts have a way of wrapping around you, soft and invisible, until the thought of peeling them away seems almost reckless. But there is also a restlessness, an itch that grows as you notice how little real challenge survives in your day-to-day routine. You realize that every hunger is instantly satisfied, every discomfort avoided with the touch of a button. It feels safe, but also a little dull. That's when the idea starts to take root. What if, for a brief moment, you surrendered all this control? What if you tested not just your body, but the deeper layers of your mind against the world as it was, not as you've made it? As the plan unfolds, friends and family respond with disbelief, some with genuine concern, others with amusement. They ask if you're running from something or searching for meaning, and you don't have a simple answer. It's not about escaping life, it's about confronting it head-on, stripped of everything that blunts its edges. It's a protest against the ordinary, a deliberate leap into the unknown, a rebellion fueled not by anger, but by curiosity, and a desire to remember what it means to be truly alive. You expect darkness to be just the absence of light, but real darkness is an active presence. It presses in, reshaping your thoughts, erasing distances, swallowing the faintest outlines of the world around you. Your eyes strain, desperate for patterns, but there are none, only shifting black and deeper black. It is not merely visual, it seeps into your nerves. Without screens or lamps to banish it, your mind starts to drift into places it never visits when distracted. There's an edge to everything, a sense that each unfamiliar sound is a possible threat, a challenge to the fragile barrier between comfort and vulnerability. The first sensations are physical. The air feels colder than you remember. You wrap your arms tighter around yourself, listening to the slow creak of your own bones. Your skin prickles, as if you're waiting for something to happen, and every movement, whether the shifting of a pebble under your foot or the soft flutter of a wing far overhead, snaps you to attention. You try to remember how long it's been since you felt truly powerless over your surroundings. In the cave, there is no switch to flip, no device to command the darkness away. Instead, you are left with the raw fact of night, and the realization that you are a guest here. Time seems to stretch and bend, seconds lose their shape, minutes become endless, and you find yourself caught in a loop of small rituals, adjusting your body for warmth, running your fingers along the rough wall, listening, always listening. Shadows, once a figure of speech, are now your companions. Your imagination fills the gaps with stories, some ancient, some born just for tonight, about what might be lurking beyond the edge of sight. Rational thoughts try to fight their way in, reminding you that you're safe, that there's nothing out there but stone and wind, but your senses argue otherwise. The mind, given nothing to occupy it, returns to its oldest language, caution. The loneliness is different than anything you've felt in the city. Out there, solitude is voluntary and temporary, always one text or call away from ending. Here, isolation is complete. You feel small in a way you've never experienced, a single pulse of life in a world that is indifferent, ancient, vast. At first, the awareness is overwhelming, almost suffocating. You start to notice your own breathing, the gentle trembling of your hands, the odd symphony of sounds your body makes just to keep going. You miss voices, even those you once found annoying, and find yourself whispering thoughts aloud just to remember the shape of language. As the night deepens, your mind starts to adapt, shifting its focus from panic to observation. You listen more carefully, picking out the difference between water dripping somewhere in the distance and the tiny scuttle of an insect just beyond reach. Your body tenses at every unfamiliar sound, but slowly, very slowly, you begin to sense a pattern. Not every noise is a threat. Some become predictable, almost comforting in their repetition. The initial flood of fear begins to settle into something else, a kind of raw alertness, the knowledge that you are not in control, but not entirely helpless either. This is the first real encounter with vulnerability. In darkness, stripped of all defenses, you begin to realize how much of modern life is designed to keep such feelings at bay. But here, in the cave, there is nowhere to hide from them. You feel exposed, but also, unexpectedly, alive. Every sensation is heightened, every thought given room to stretch. The experience is neither good nor bad. It simply is, unfiltered and complete. Sleep does not come easily. Your mind races, replaying memories, inventing worries, searching for comfort that doesn't exist. Eventually, exhaustion wins, and you drift into a shallow, dream-filled rest, wrapped in the sound of your own heart and the gentle, indifferent breathing of the earth itself. When you open your eyes again, unsure how many hours have passed, the darkness remains, unchanged, absolute. But something inside you has shifted. A faint spark of resilience, the first step in learning how to be alone with yourself, truly alone, for the first time. Morning comes not with the jarring insistence of a phone alarm or the soft chime of an electronic clock, but with a gentle, ancient certainty. It is the slow brightening of the world at the mouth of the cave, the growing chorus of birds whose calls cut through the lingering silence. Your eyes open because the darkness has lifted by degrees, replaced by a faint bluish glow that signals the arrival of day. At first, you're unsure what has woken you. There is no schedule, no voice or vibration. It's simply the changing light, the cold air shifting against your skin, and some deeper rhythm in your body that responds as it once did for countless generations. There's a strange unfamiliarity in this kind of waking. Your mind, untethered from clocks and calendars, wanders in a fog between dreams and reality. There's no precise sense of time, only the subtle feeling that the world is stirring and you are meant to join it. The air in the cave is cooler than you remembered, and you become acutely aware of your limbs, stiff, sore from the unfamiliar bed of earth and stone. Every part of you feels more physical, more grounded, as if the boundary between your body and the world has grown thinner. Hunger greets you immediately. It is not the mild background signal that arrives at a designated breakfast hour, but a deep, urgent reminder that nothing is certain here. Not your next meal, not your comfort, not even your routine. The hunger feels sharper in the wild. It's a driving force, a purpose as ancient as the sunrise. Your thoughts begin to organize themselves around the simple question, how will you feed yourself today? The world outside the cave is painted in gray and gold, dew clinging to the leaves, the scent of damp earth promising both challenge and possibility. You notice how your senses are sharper now. The cool, damp air smells intensely real. Sounds carry farther. The flutter of wings, the faint rustle in the grass, the distant splash of water. Without the distraction of constant artificial noise, each small sound feels important, loaded with meaning. Your mind catalogs them almost unconsciously, searching for clues, where the nearest stream might be, which direction holds the most promise for food, how far away potential dangers lurk. This is a morning without coffee, without a screen to scroll, without a set list of appointments. There is only the world as it unfolds in front of you, and your body, slightly confused but also curious, falling slowly into its own natural pace. You feel the unfamiliar pressure of having to decide what truly matters: warmth, food, safety. The simplest decisions take on a new gravity. Do you leave the cave now, trusting the light, or do you wait and observe, letting your body finish waking up? Each moment stretches, filled with small choices that, in the context of survival, carry an outsized importance. You realize that you are learning to trust signals you usually ignore: the gentle cramping of hunger, the cold pressing against your skin, the slow expansion of your lungs as you breathe in the crisp morning air. Without external cues, your body tries to remember how to listen to the sun, how to wake with its rise, and quiet with its setting. There's an awkwardness at first, a stumbling effort to shake off the habits of alarm clocks and late-night screens, but beneath it, something ancient begins to reassert itself. With the day fully underway, your priorities become clear and unmistakable. Food is not just a convenience, it is a quest, an anchor, something to shape your hours around. Every sense is tuned to the task: eyes scanning for movement, ears pricked for the soft crunch of berries or the distant flow of water. Your mind, usually scattered in a dozen directions by obligations and notifications, now converges on the simple act of searching, of being present in the world around you. The strangeness of this first morning lingers. It's a blend of discomfort and wonder, of confusion and anticipation. In the absence of structure, you discover the beginnings of a new routine, one that is dictated not by numbers on a screen, but by light, hunger, weather, and instinct. Each small victory, the warmth of a sunbeam reaching the cave, the scent of wild plants, the reassurance of another living thing in the distance, feels magnified, a kind of celebration. There's no guarantee of comfort, but every sensation is sharper, more vivid, as if the world itself is waking up alongside you. This is the new reality, where the day begins not with a schedule, but with a question and a purpose. What do you need, and how will you find it? You stand, stretching limbs that ache from a night on stone, blinking into the brightness, feeling at once exposed and alive. The world outside the cave is waiting, and, for the first time in a long while, you sense that your body and mind are finally in agreement, both eager to answer whatever challenge the day will bring. Hunger has a way of sharpening not just the senses, but the mind itself. In the city, it's easy to forget this. Food is always just a few steps away, wrapped and labeled, the product of countless invisible hands and machines. Here, surrounded by the wilderness and the silence of the cave, you become reacquainted with an older, more primal version of this feeling. Hunger is no longer a background discomfort or a fleeting annoyance. It's a force, pressing you into action, making every decision urgent and every movement purposeful. You step out from the cave's cool shadow, the sunlight already filtering through the thick canopy above. There is no path, no sign pointing toward an easy meal. Everything looks both inviting and impossible. Every bush and patch of grass could hold a secret, a handful of berries, a hidden root, or something that bites back. The air smells of earth and growing things, and you realize just how little you know about what is edible and what is dangerous. Suddenly, the memory of supermarket aisles seems faintly absurd. The idea of abundance feels almost mythical. The first challenge is simply where to begin. You remember vague instructions from books and documentaries. Bright berries can be poisonous. Roots are sometimes edible, but which ones? You move slowly, scanning the undergrowth, looking for anything familiar. The work is painstaking, your confidence shaken by each unknown leaf and strange shape. Your stomach rumbles, impatient and unconcerned with safety, but you move with caution. Every decision now carries real consequences. Eventually, you stumble across a patch of berries, tiny, dark blue, nestled among thorny branches. You hesitate, trying to recall whether these are the safe kind. The desire to eat battles with the need to survive, and for a moment you simply kneel there, studying the shapes and colors, weighing risk and reward. You pick one, roll it between your fingers, then set it aside. The hunt continues, a silent negotiation with your own instincts. Roots offer a different challenge. You find yourself digging in the cool soil, searching for tubers and bulbs, your hands soon stained with dirt. The act itself feels oddly soothing, simple, repetitive, almost meditative. When you finally unearth a starchy root, your excitement is tempered by uncertainty. Will it nourish you or make you ill? Still, you clean it as best you can, scraping away the soil with a stone, and set it aside. Each new discovery is both a victory and a risk. Animals are a different story altogether. You listen for the rustle of small creatures, the fleeting shadow of a bird, the distant thump of something larger moving through the brush. For the first time, you notice how adept the animals are at survival, how quickly they vanish at the first sign of your presence. You make clumsy attempts to approach, heart racing with anticipation, but your movements are awkward, your footsteps loud. The animals are gone before you even get close. There is a moment of frustration, a sense of being outmatched by even the smallest inhabitants of this place. With each failed attempt, the weight of hunger grows, but so does your respect for the natural world. You realize that nothing here is guaranteed. Every meal must be earned, every mouthful a triumph. Yet, just as discouragement begins to set in, you find something unexpected. A cluster of wild greens, the unmistakable smell of onion in the air. You pull up a handful, inspecting the thin, pungent stalks. This, at least, you know you can eat. The joy of discovery is sudden and overwhelming. You taste the sharp flavor of the wild onion, and for a moment, it's more delicious than any restaurant meal. The food is rough, uneven, a little dirty, but it fills you with a sense of accomplishment that no ready-made snack ever could. Each bite is a reminder that survival is both a challenge and a reward, a game of patience, observation, and perseverance. As the day stretches on, your eyes begin to adapt, picking out new possibilities in the landscape. A patch of mushrooms under a fallen log, a distant tree heavy with fruit, the fresh tracks of a rabbit in the mud. You may not feast today, but you have learned the first lesson of this ancient life. Every mouthful matters, every find is worth celebrating, and the wild will only reveal its gifts to those who are willing to look, to listen, and to try again after every failure. The forest, indifferent and generous by turns, has started to feel less like an enemy and more like a puzzle, one that, with time and effort, you just might learn how to solve. Thirst grows quietly at first, a subtle tightening in the throat, an awareness of dryness that's easy to dismiss. In the everyday world, it never really has the chance to deepen. A glass of water, a sip from a bottle, the easy twist of a faucet, these things erase discomfort before it ever becomes urgent. But here, in the wild, with no plastic bottle waiting in a backpack, thirst gathers power. It builds from mild annoyance to a steady ache, then into a single-minded craving that clouds your thoughts and magnifies every detail of your surroundings. You start to notice how your body slows, how your lips stick together, how even swallowing becomes a conscious effort. Your mind, already stretched by hunger, now begins to fixate on water with growing intensity. Every sound, wind in the grass, the rustle of leaves, might be the distant promise of a stream. You remember how crucial water was to people who lived this way, how it shaped where they traveled, what they ate, and even how long they could survive in any one place. The search becomes your obsession. You set out from the cave, scanning the landscape for hints. A green patch of moss on a stone, animal tracks converging on a muddy spot, the coolness of air drifting down a gentle slope. Time loses its structure as you wander, the sun creeping higher, your thirst urging you to move faster. Each dip in the earth holds potential. Every shadow might conceal a trickle of life-saving water. The forest feels endless, but desperation sharpens your senses. Then you hear it, a faint, irregular melody, water dancing over stones. Your heart kicks up, energy returning to limbs that moments ago felt heavy and slow. You push through brambles and branches, and there it is, a narrow stream glinting in the light, both beautiful and necessary. The urge to drink immediately is overwhelming, but even in your need, caution wins out. The stories you've heard of bacteria, of illness from a careless gulp, echo in your mind. Kneeling at the edge, you examine the water, watching for movement, smelling the earthy scent, weighing risk and relief. You remember that ancient people had their methods, boiling water over fire, straining it through sand or cloth. But here, building a fire feels like a distant project. You improvise, scooping up the water in cupped hands, letting it settle in a container made from bark and stone, wishing for just a second that you had brought anything at all from your old life. Fire becomes more than warmth now. It is survival itself, the line between safety and sickness. The process is painstaking. You gather wood, coax a small flame to life with patience and stubbornness, then wait as the water bubbles in a makeshift vessel. Each moment seems to drag, the sound of boiling both a promise and a torment. Finally, when the water has cooled, you bring it to your lips, cautious but desperate. The first taste is startling, earthy, pure, touched by the memory of the woods. It's nothing like the filtered, flavorless liquid you've always known. Every swallow is a relief, every drop a luxury you never realized you were missing. The sensation of coolness running down your throat is almost intoxicating, as if you're learning to drink for the first time. In that moment, you understand the true meaning of need and the joy that comes from fulfilling it with your own hands. Drinking becomes a ritual, something sacred. You savor each sip, mindful that you cannot waste a single drop. The fear of getting sick lingers at the edges, but for now the taste of water overwhelms everything else, a reward more powerful than any meal, a source of strength that brings color back to your world. You realize that water is not just a resource, but a miracle, a daily gift that the cave people must have guarded and cherished above all else. As your thirst fades, replaced by energy and quiet satisfaction, you feel a new kind of gratitude, deeper, more instinctive than any you've known before. Water is no longer invisible or taken for granted. It is a goal, an achievement, a reminder that even in a world of hardship and uncertainty, there are moments of pure, uncomplicated joy. And as you return to the cave, the sun dipping lower, you carry this victory with you, ready to face whatever comes next, knowing that you've already found something essential and true. Cold finds you quickly, often before you've had time to fully notice it creeping in. Without layers of fabric, without the protective barrier of a jacket or blanket, the evening air seems to reach straight through your skin and settle in your bones. What began as a mild shiver soon becomes a steady, unyielding ache, every muscle tensing in an unconscious effort to hold on to what little warmth remains. The cave itself seems to breathe cold. Its walls radiate a damp chill. The air grows heavier, and you realize how much of modern comfort comes from simply keeping the world at bay. You try to wrap your arms around yourself, curling tighter, searching for any position that brings relief. The softness of beds and the familiar cocoon of a heated room become distant fantasies. Every inch of exposed skin feels vulnerable, prickling with goosebumps, your body's quiet rebellion against the elements. The urge to move, to do anything to generate heat, becomes overpowering. You find yourself pacing the small confines of the cave, rubbing your hands together, stamping your feet, every movement echoing through the empty dark. Thoughts turn restless and scattered in the cold. It's hard to focus on anything beyond the immediate need for warmth. Simple plans, what you'll eat, how you'll find more water, dissolve into the background. The present moment narrows until it is just you and the chill, locked in an uneasy dance. You become aware of sensations you've always ignored. The sting in your fingers, the ache in your jaw from clenching against the cold, the strange numbness that creeps along your arms. Time stretches and slows, the discomfort growing until it feels like all you've ever known. The mind begins to wander to the ingenuity of those who came before. How did they do it? Without fleece or insulation, without a furnace humming quietly in the background. The answer comes in the ancient solution that has sustained people through countless winters: fire. It's a simple word, but out here, it's the difference between hope and despair, comfort and suffering. You set about the task with more urgency than skill, gathering whatever dry twigs and branches you can find near the cave's entrance. Your fingers fumble, clumsy with cold, as you arrange the wood into a rough pile. The challenge is immediate. No lighter, no matches, only stones and friction, a process that demands patience and persistence. Each failed attempt stings more than the wind, frustration mounting as your hands go numb and your breath comes out in shaky clouds. But something in you refuses to give up. There is a stubborn determination that rises with every setback. You remember the stories of ancient people, of sparks coaxed from flint, of embers fed with dry grass and patience. The process becomes a kind of meditation. Strike, scrape, breathe, try again. Your whole world shrinks to the tiny space between your hands, the hope that the next attempt will succeed. When the first wisp of smoke curls upward, it feels almost like a hallucination, something too good to be true. Carefully you blow, feeding the ember with your breath, watching as it catches on the dry tinder. The sudden leap of flame is both shocking and exhilarating. Warmth rushes out in all directions, pushing back the darkness, turning the cave walls from cold stone to golden, flickering comfort. You huddle close, feeling the heat seep into your body, relief flooding every nerve. It is more than just physical comfort. It is triumph, a victory that feels deeply personal. The cold recedes, not all at once, but gradually, chased away by the steady glow. Your mind begins to clear, thoughts stretching beyond mere survival. With fire, the world changes. Food can be cooked, water purified, fear kept at bay. You realize how much power lies in these simple acts, how the ability to make warmth is both protection and freedom. As you watch the flames dance, you begin to understand the strange pride that must have come with mastering fire for the first time. It is not just about chasing away the chill, but about reshaping your relationship with the world, turning raw discomfort into safety, helplessness into skill. Wrapped in the glow, you feel the last traces of cold slip away, replaced by a quiet confidence. The night outside is still vast and indifferent, but inside the cave, you have carved out a small circle of light, a reminder that even in the harshest conditions, ingenuity and determination can create comfort where none seemed possible. The quest for fire, stripped of all modern shortcuts, is nothing like the simple act you remember from camping trips or cozy evenings at home. Out here, in the primordial cold of the cave, the challenge takes on a scale that feels almost epic. You begin with shaky confidence, recalling bits and pieces from survival shows and books. A spark, a bundle of dry grass, patience. But it's not long before reality intrudes. Every step is harder than you'd imagined. Every mistake amplified by numb fingers and growing exhaustion. The struggle becomes a test not just of skill, but of will. Your first attempts seem laughable in hindsight. Stones clack together with a dull thud, producing nothing but frustration. Rubbing sticks generates only a faint warmth on your blistered palms. Each time hope flares, a little smoke, the faintest hint of heat, it's quickly snuffed out by an errant breath or a gust of cold air sneaking into the cave. The repetition is numbing. Arrange the kindling, strike the rocks, coax a spark, fail, and start over. Hours slip by, marked only by the rhythmic scraping and your own muttered encouragement. As daylight fades, the cave grows colder, and doubt begins to settle in. You wonder if you've underestimated this challenge, if maybe the stories of early humans are just that. Fatigue drags at your body. Hunger and chill sharpen your senses until every failure feels like a small disaster. The temptation to give up, to simply curl up and wait for morning, is strong. You picture the warmth of home, the convenience of a match, the effortless flick of a lighter, and for a moment, it's almost unbearable. Yet with each setback, something inside you hardens. Frustration turns to determination, despair to stubbornness. There's a rhythm to the effort, a meditative quality that slowly draws you in. You become acutely aware of your breathing, your movements growing more deliberate. Every detail matters: the shape of the wood, the angle of the stone, the dryness of the grass. Trial and error become a language all their own, a conversation between you and the elements that asks for patience and respect. Then, unexpectedly, the miracle happens. A spark lands just right, catching in the nest of tinder you've so carefully arranged. You freeze, breath held, barely daring to believe. Gently, you feed it air, watching as the ember glows, then smolders, then finally bursts into a thin, eager flame. The transformation is immediate. Darkness pushed back, the sharp scent of burning grass mixing with the cold, and a sudden dizzying rush of relief. Every hardship fades in that golden light, replaced by a surge of euphoria so intense it leaves you grinning, shaking with triumph. Fire is more than heat. It is safety. It is life. Its light fills the cave, dancing on the walls, turning rough stone into a haven. The shadows it casts are no longer menacing, but protective, a barrier against whatever waits outside. You watch the flames leap and twist, mesmerized by the way they consume, the way they warm. The chill that once seemed endless is driven back, replaced by comfort so profound it feels like magic. In this moment, you understand why fire is at the center of every myth, every legend about survival and discovery. It is not just an element, but a companion, a source of hope, a sign that you are not entirely at the mercy of the world. It binds you to everyone who came before, those who huddled around flames in distant ages, inventing stories and forging the beginnings of community. Each spark is a small rebellion, proof that even in the most unforgiving places, ingenuity and perseverance can conjure miracles from nothing. As you settle beside your fire, letting the warmth seep into your bones, you realize that the struggle was not just against the cold, but against your own doubts and limits. The flames are fragile, always needing care and attention, but their presence transforms everything. Where there was fear, there is now comfort. Where there was loneliness, a sense of belonging. Fire, you see now, is not just survival. It is the promise of light in the darkness, the alchemy that turns hardship into security, and a quiet magic that feels as old as the world itself. The cave, in daylight, is no longer just a shelter from the elements. It becomes the setting for your own attempt at making order from chaos. Its damp stone walls, once cold and impersonal, now feel like both challenge and invitation. As the initial shock of discomfort gives way to routine, you find your attention shifting from survival to something subtler. How to shape this wild space into something that resembles a home, no matter how humble or temporary. You start with the essentials, instinctively seeking to claim a corner as your own. The spot you choose is dictated by necessity, a place where the floor is flattest, furthest from the constant drip of water, close enough to the mouth to catch the morning light, but deep enough to offer protection from wind and curious animals. It isn't much, just a patch of ground softened by a layer of dry leaves and moss you painstakingly gather from outside. But even this first act feels important, a quiet assertion that you belong here, if only for now. With each passing day, small comforts grow in importance. You search for furniture in whatever the world provides. A flat stone becomes a seat. Another, propped nearby, becomes a rough table where you can lay out roots, berries, or your primitive tools. Sticks are arranged in patterns, some to hang found objects, others to serve as makeshift racks for drying what little food you manage to gather. A hollow in the rock becomes a shelf, storing essentials, flints, a handful of dry tinder, the precious remains of the last fire. You find yourself rearranging, refining, nudging the details until each object has its place, each space its purpose. This process of building order from nothing is strangely soothing. There is satisfaction in the rhythm: gather, sort, arrange, improve. The space gradually shifts, less a random cave, more a reflection of your own needs and habits. You clear away sharp stones, smooth the ground, block a draft with a pile of branches. Little by little, a sense of ownership grows, a fragile but persistent feeling that this place is yours, defined not by walls or possessions, but by the effort you put into shaping it. You learn to observe the cave differently. Where once you saw only discomfort, now you notice opportunities. The light at certain hours forms a natural clock, letting you judge the time without need of technology. The echoes and drafts become signals, telling you which corners are warmest, which are best avoided. Even the darkness loses some of its threat. At night, you use your fire's glow to carve out a small world within the larger mystery of the cave. The flickering light transforms the roughest walls, painting them with movement, giving the space a shifting sense of security. As days pass, you begin to personalize your corner in small, almost instinctive ways. Patterns scratched into the dirt, stones arranged just so, a collection of feathers or interesting sticks, each item a talisman against the strangeness of your situation. There's a ritual in returning to your chosen spot at the end of each day, settling in and feeling, for a few moments, a kind of peace. The smells of smoke and damp earth become familiar, the rhythm of the wind outside a lullaby rather than a warning. You realize, too, that the act of making a home is about more than physical space. It's about finding comfort in routine, purpose in repetition, meaning in the smallest details. Even in a cave, dank, drafty, imperfect, you can create a sense of belonging. It's a quiet triumph, one that connects you to all those who have ever shaped their own worlds out of the wilderness. In this raw stone chamber, you discover a new kind of intimacy with the world, a partnership built from necessity, patience, and the slow magic of adaptation.
Each night, as you settled beside your carefully arranged fire, you look around and realize that this place, for all its roughness, now shelters something precious. Not just your body, but your determination, your hopes, your persistent human desire to turn even the barest shelter into a home. And with each passing day, the cave feels less like a prison and more like a testament to resourcefulness, to resilience, and to the quiet, stubborn hope that home can be made anywhere, if you're willing to claim it. Fear in the wilderness doesn't announce itself with the obvious. It comes instead in the uncertain flicker of shadows, the sudden hush of wind, the strange noise that shatters the familiar rhythm of your new routine. The first true fear arrives unexpectedly, in the middle of a night that had seemed peaceful. The fire is burning low, casting soft shapes on the cave walls, and you are almost drifting into sleep when a sound echoes from outside, a sharp, unfamiliar crack, followed by silence so absolute it feels heavy. Your heart begins to race. The cave, which had grown comfortable by day, instantly transforms into a world of unknowns. Every story you've ever heard about the dangers of the wild, predators, venomous creatures, the sheer indifference of nature, rushes to the front of your mind. You try to listen closely, holding your breath, straining to separate imagination from reality. Was that the wind, a falling branch, or is there something watching from just beyond the circle of firelight, drawn by the scent of food or the warmth of your presence? In the city, threats are obvious, contained, often distant. Here, every sound is amplified. Every possibility feels urgent. Fear is no longer a vague emotion, but a physical presence. Your body tenses, your senses sharpen, adrenaline surges. The urge to bolt, to hide deeper in the cave is almost overwhelming, yet you force yourself to remain still, to reason through the moment. You remind yourself that the wild is not just dangerous but also indifferent. Not every sound signals harm. Morning brings a fragile relief, but the memory of fear lingers. You venture out, cautious, scanning for signs. A trail in the mud, a scattering of feathers, the distinct marks of small claws near the cave's entrance. It could have been a fox, a badger, some curious animal searching for food. The evidence is inconclusive, but the lesson is clear. You are not alone. This is their world as much as yours, and your presence here is just a brief interruption in their ancient routines. You begin to see the wilderness differently, with a mixture of awe and caution. The animals are experts in survival. You are a visitor, learning the rules as you go. Each encounter, whether it's a flash of fur disappearing into the undergrowth or the distant call of an owl, reminds you of your place in this delicate balance. The fear you felt was not just about physical danger, but about the unknown, about your own limitations and the unpredictability of the wild. Rational thought tries to assert itself. You analyze every risk, planning how you might respond to different threats, keeping the fire going through the night, storing food well away from your sleeping area, moving quietly and making yourself less conspicuous.
These practical steps bring a measure of control, but they don't erase the underlying anxiety. Fear, you realize, is a kind of teacher, a reminder that caution and respect are just as vital to survival as any tool or skill. Over time, your relationship with fear evolves. It becomes less paralyzing, more instructive. You begin to anticipate the patterns of local animals, to read the landscape for signs, to adjust your habits and expectations. You develop a wary respect for the wild, understanding that every night brings new uncertainties, but also new opportunities for growth. The first real threat, whatever its source, leaves its mark, not as trauma, but as a lesson, an initiation into the deeper reality of life beyond comfort. As the days pass, you find that the wild is not just a place of danger, but of beauty and connection. Your senses, once dulled by routine, are now attuned to the world in ways you never imagined. The boundaries between fear and fascination blur. The unknown is no longer just a source of anxiety, but of wonder. Each night, as you tend your fire and listen to the sounds outside, you realize that you are not just surviving the wild. You are slowly becoming a part of it, learning its language, shaped by its presence in ways you will carry long after you leave the cave behind. Loneliness in the wild arrives not as an empty silence, but as an active ache, an awareness of absence that deepens with every day you spend away from the familiar noise of society. At first, solitude brings a certain peace. The absence of interruptions, demands, and chatter allows your thoughts to stretch, uncoiling after years of constant compression. The cave becomes a place of meditation, the sounds of nature your only company. But soon, the novelty of silence wears thin, replaced by a subtle longing for connection, any connection. As days pass, you start to notice how much of human life is built around others. Even the simplest routines, preparing food, gathering supplies, tending the fire, begin to feel strangely incomplete when carried out alone. You find yourself talking to the fire, to the birds outside, even to the small arrangement of stones you've used as a makeshift table. The act of speaking, of hearing your own voice bounce back from the damp cave walls, becomes a small comfort. It is not madness, but the mind's instinct to reach beyond itself, to fill the gaps left by missing voices. The urge to create company, even if only imaginary, grows quietly but insistently. You remember stories of explorers and castaways inventing friends from scraps of cloth or carved pieces of wood, and now you understand. It's not childishness or weakness, but a profound human response to isolation. So you catch yourself giving names to the shapes in the shadows, inventing histories for the cracks in the cave wall. These make-believe companions ease the loneliness, if only for a while, reminding you that imagination is sometimes the strongest antidote to solitude. Your thoughts drift to those who lived this way for generations, early humans who relied not just on skill, but on each other. You imagine a small community gathered around a shared fire, exchanging stories, dividing the labor of survival, comforting each other in the darkness. The need to belong, to be part of a group, feels suddenly primal, as basic as hunger or thirst. You realize that cooperation was not just a social nicety, but a survival strategy, the foundation upon which all progress was built. You wonder how much of yourself is shaped by the presence of others. Alone, your strengths and weaknesses are laid bare. There is no one to share burdens or joys, no mirror for your thoughts. Each small triumph feels muted, each setback heavier. The world outside the cave is vast and indifferent, and for the first time you truly feel your own smallness. Yet there's also a strange strength in this self-sufficiency, a resilience that grows in the space where community once existed. At night, with the fire casting familiar patterns on the walls, the absence of voices becomes even more acute. You imagine what it would be like to have a companion beside you, a friend to laugh with, to share the weight of fear, to celebrate the day's small victories. The instinct to reach out, to join forces, is undeniable. In your dreams, you see figures moving in the firelight, hear echoes of laughter and conversation, fragments of a world you left behind. Gradually, you come to appreciate the complexity of solitude. It is both a challenge and a teacher, forcing you to confront parts of yourself that are easily hidden in the crowd. It sharpens your awareness, deepens your gratitude for the simple presence of others, and brings into focus the quiet courage required to persist alone. But it also makes clear that, for all our independence, humans are wired for connection, drawn together by necessity, habit, and the deep comfort of companionship. You find ways to honor this need, even in isolation. You create rituals, sharing stories with the fire, marking the passing days with small celebrations, inventing games with the stones and sticks around you. The cave, once a symbol of separation, becomes a theater for your imagination, a place where community lives on, if only in memory and invention. Each day spent alone is a reminder. Survival is possible on your own, but thriving is almost always a shared endeavor, a collective song carried through the ages, waiting for voices to join in harmony once again. At first, the world seems full of objects, sticks, stones, bones, leaves, that are merely part of the scenery, unremarkable details in a landscape shaped by nature's indifferent hand. But as the days pass and your needs grow more specific, you begin to see these objects with new eyes. The stick is no longer just a fallen branch. The stone, not just a lump underfoot. Each becomes a possibility, a tool waiting to be shaped by imagination and necessity. In this world, the simplest things become precious, transformed by purpose and intent. Hunger, thirst, and the challenge of daily tasks force your mind into a new kind of creativity. You find yourself searching for stones that are sharp, not just smooth. Branches that are strong and straight, not just easy to carry. There's a careful ritual to the search, running your fingers along the edge of a rock, testing the flexibility of a sapling, measuring each item not by its appearance, but by the way it feels in your hand. This attention to detail, so rarely needed in modern life, becomes a quiet obsession. Your first attempts at tool-making are awkward, almost comical. You lash a jagged stone to a sturdy branch using strips of bark, improvising knots that come undone again and again. The result is crude, a blunt knife, more symbolic than useful, but holding it gives you a rush of satisfaction. This is more than an object. It's the answer to a problem, a bridge between yourself and the wild world that surrounds you. You test the edge on a patch of bark, scrape away the outer layer, feeling a spark of pride with every thin curl that falls away. With practice, your creations grow more sophisticated. A thicker branch becomes a digging stick for roots and tubers. A pointed rock, chipped carefully with another stone, serves as a makeshift spear tip. Each tool takes time and energy to produce, and each carries the memory of frustration and breakthrough. You learn to see your surroundings as a toolbox, every item a potential asset if you approach it with patience and a willingness to experiment. As your hands grow calloused, your relationship with them changes too. No longer passive instruments, they become partners in your survival, capable of shaping, building, and solving. You become acutely aware of every scrape, every bruise, every new layer of dirt beneath your fingernails. The line between your body and the world blurs. You are no longer just a visitor here, but an active participant, reshaping your environment in small but significant ways. You begin to respect the ingenuity of those who lived before you. The simplicity of a stone knife or a fire-hardened spear masks the complexity of thought and practice required to create it. Each new tool makes your world a little safer, a little more manageable. With a sharpened stick, gathering edible roots becomes less about luck and more about skill. With a stone blade, carving, scraping, and preparing food become tasks you can approach with intention, not desperation. Every tool is a lesson, every failure a teacher. You start to see the world not just as a place to survive, but as a place to shape and be shaped by. The act of creating something with your own hands, of turning the raw elements around you into something purposeful, is deeply empowering. You understand now why a stick or a stone is more than a toy. It is a symbol of possibility, a testament to the human urge to create, improve, and adapt. As you look over your small collection of crude but functional implements, you realize that this is not just survival. It is the beginning of invention. Each tool holds a story, a memory of struggle and discovery. The objects around you are no longer just part of the background, but living proof of your capacity to transform necessity into ingenuity. And with each new creation, the cave feels less like a place of hardship and more like the birthplace of a quiet, persistent hope, that with enough time and effort, even the simplest hands can reshape the world. As dusk gathers at the mouth of the cave, the fire becomes more than just a source of warmth or safety. It transforms into a living heart, a flickering companion in the growing dark. The night presses in from all sides, and suddenly the small circle of golden light feels like the very edge of the known world. Beyond it, shadows stretch long and deep, whispering promises and threats in equal measure. Here, on the border between safety and the unknown, imagination wakes and stretches its limbs. There is something ancient and universal in the ritual of gathering around a fire. You feel it in your bones, a quiet pull to settle close, to let the flames fill your eyes, to let your mind drift. The dance of light and shadow on the cave walls turns ordinary rock into a canvas for stories. You watch the fire, your thoughts slipping loose from the worries of survival, and realize how the simple act of sitting in its glow unlocks new chambers of your mind. The present softens, and the boundaries between reality and invention blur. It is here, in this delicate hour, that fears and dreams become indistinguishable. Every snap and crackle from the flames suggests the presence of unseen things just beyond the reach of light. Predators, spirits, ancient mysteries. You imagine eyes watching from the darkness, or creatures moving quietly among the trees. Your heart pounds, but you also feel a strange thrill. Fear, when shared with the fire, becomes less a threat and more a story, something to be shaped, examined, and even laughed at. You find yourself remembering tales you heard as a child, of heroes and monsters, of places lost to time. Alone or not, you start to invent your own stories, weaving together fragments of memory, wish, and wonder. Sometimes your stories are practical. The day's hunt or the struggle to light a fire becomes an epic of luck and cunning. Other times, your tales slip into fantasy. You become the explorer of hidden worlds, the discoverer of magical secrets. There are no boundaries here. The fire invites all stories, no matter how wild. It's easy to see how, thousands of years ago, people might have first invented myth and legend in just this way. The fire is a gathering point, a focus for attention and imagination, a place where the day's dangers can be recast as victories or mysteries. The sharing of stories, real or imagined, becomes a ritual, a way of turning fear into comfort and isolation into connection, even if your only audience is the play of shadows or the echo of your own voice.
There is healing in the telling. The act of speaking your thoughts aloud, of spinning hope or fear into words, eases the weight of loneliness and uncertainty. The stories become companions, each one a thread binding you to the countless others who have sat by fires in the dark, transforming their world through imagination. In these moments, your sense of time changes. You become part of a lineage stretching back to the very beginning, united by the need to explain, to dream, to turn the chaos outside into something meaningful and shared. Sometimes, as you let the flames hypnotize you, dreams come unbidden, visions of the life you left behind, or of a future shaped by new skills and courage. The fire becomes both oracle and confessor, drawing out your secret wishes and deepest anxieties. Your mind, no longer solely focused on the practicalities of survival, opens to possibility. You invent, you remember, you hope. In the comfort of the fire's embrace, your spirit is free to wander. When at last you drift toward sleep, the glow of the embers remains, a silent promise that the night can be faced, that darkness is not only a threat, but a canvas for everything your mind can conjure. In the quiet between fire and shadow, you discover that survival is about more than food and safety. It is about the stories we tell, the dreams we dare, and the quiet comfort of knowing that in some way we are never truly alone as long as imagination lives within the circle of firelight. There's a moment of disbelief, a pause, as your mind scrambles to understand what has happened. In the familiar world, injury is an inconvenience, quickly treated and soon forgotten. Here, even a small cut or twisted joint carries weight. You feel exposed, suddenly vulnerable in a way that's both physical and psychological. The security of civilization, the knowledge that help is just a call away, is gone. You're forced to confront the reality that in the wild, pain can mean something more. An obstacle to gathering food, to building shelter, to simple survival. The first instinct is panic. You replay the event, how it happened, what you could have done differently, the implications for the days ahead. You notice how quickly your priorities shift. Hunger, thirst, and the ache of loneliness all recede, replaced by the urgent question of how to care for your injury with nothing but the resources at hand. You scan your environment with new eyes, looking for anything that might help. A clean leaf to cover the wound, water from the stream to rinse away dirt, sap from a tree to act as a makeshift bandage. You work slowly, clumsily, improvising as you go. There is no guide, no assurance of success. The process is as much about hope as it is about skill. You remember fragments of advice, folk remedies, images from books and documentaries. Everything is trial and error. Pain becomes a steady companion, coloring every action. Sleep is fitful, broken by discomfort, each hour stretching longer as you wait to see if healing will come. The fear that grows in these moments is not just for your body, but for your very place in this world. You sense how easily everything can unravel. The careful balance of survival, the confidence you'd begun to build, all threatened by something as small as a cut or as invisible as a fever. Every sound outside the cave feels more ominous now.
every task a little riskier. You realize how much you took for granted, the luxury of certainty, the comfort of help always near at hand. Yet, with time, a kind of resilience emerges. You learn to move differently, favoring your injured side, slowing your pace, taking nothing for granted. You invent new ways to manage daily tasks, working around your limitations. The pain, while ever present, becomes more familiar, less frightening. You begin to trust your instincts, to listen closely to your body, to read its signals, to respect its limits. The process of healing is slow, uncertain, but each small improvement feels monumental. The swelling that finally goes down, the first pain-free step, the way the wound starts to knit together. These moments bring not only relief, but a new sense of strength. You understand now that vulnerability is part of the bargain you've made with the wild, but so is adaptation, patience, and a hard-won hope. There's humility in the realization that you are not invincible, that survival requires caution as much as courage. The world outside remains indifferent, but within the small circle of your efforts, you reclaim a sense of agency. Each scar, each lesson learned in pain, becomes a badge, not of defeat, but of persistence. And as you lie beside the fire, nursing your first real injury, you discover a new respect for the fragility and endurance of the human body, and a deeper appreciation for every moment that passes free from pain. The first taste of food you've gathered with your own hands is nothing like the familiar comfort of a meal prepared in a kitchen, under warm lights, surrounded by the smells and sounds of home. It's raw, often rough, and shaped by uncertainty. Each bite is a leap into the unknown, a blend of curiosity, hope, and, sometimes, instinctive hesitation. What if this is the wrong berry, the wrong root, the wrong way to cook something that should have been eaten another way? Hunger, however, doesn't wait for perfection, and eventually you take the risk, trusting your senses and the cautious logic you've pieced together from observation and memory. At first, the flavors are sharp and strange. Wild greens taste intensely bitter, nothing like the salads of civilization. Berries are sometimes tart to the point of making your eyes water, sometimes so sweet they surprise you, bursting with a juice that stains your hands and lips. Roots, painstakingly dug and cleaned, are fibrous and earthy, filling your mouth with a kind of gritty stubbornness. Sometimes the food is disappointingly bland, sometimes overwhelming. There are moments of real revulsion, a mouthful of something tough, acrid, or simply wrong. Your instincts recoil, and you spit it out, heart racing, the fear of having made a mistake cutting through even your hunger. But just as often, there are flashes of real delight. The flavor of a wild onion, sharp and pungent, cuts through the monotony of bland roots and leaves. Roasting something over the fire, whether a piece of fish snatched from the stream or a handful of nuts cracked open with your own hands, brings out unexpected richness. The smoke flavors everything, transforming the simplest foods into something deeply satisfying, as if the cave itself has lent you some secret recipe from an ancient world. Each new food is an experiment, a negotiation with nature. You learn which plants need to be cooked to lose their bitterness, which berries can be eaten straight from the bush, which roots are only edible after long boiling. Sometimes mistakes are made, a meal that leaves you queasy, a flavor you can't quite tolerate. These moments are humbling, teaching you respect for the knowledge your ancestors must have worked so hard to build. Yet the joy, when it comes, is pure and immediate. The first bite of something truly nourishing, after hours of searching, digging, cleaning, and careful preparation, fills you with a satisfaction that has little to do with flavor and everything to do with achievement. It's as if the effort has been distilled into each mouthful. You savor the rough texture of roasted tuber, the burst of sweetness from a perfectly ripe berry, the flaky, smoky richness of fresh-caught fish. Hunger makes everything more vivid. The simplest meal feels like a feast. Over time, your palate changes. Foods that once seemed unpalatable become familiar, even comforting. You start to crave the sourness of wild greens, the warmth of smoky roots, the crunch of nuts you split with a rock. Disgust gives way to curiosity, curiosity to genuine pleasure. Each meal is a celebration, not just of survival, but of adaptation, patience, and the creative possibilities hidden in the landscape around you. You find yourself paying closer attention to everything you eat, appreciating the individuality of each ingredient. There is pride in the knowledge that every bite is hard-won, a testament to observation, effort, and resilience. Even disappointment, when a meal is less than delicious, reminds you that in the wild, taste is more than luxury. It is memory, experiment, sometimes caution, sometimes reward. In these moments, you understand that eating is no longer just about filling your stomach, but about discovering the world one flavor at a time. The landscape around you is not only a place of challenge, but of unexpected gifts. Each new taste a story, each meal a small triumph in the ongoing adventure of survival. And with each day, your sense of what is delicious grows broader and deeper, shaped by the wild and your own willingness to try, fail, and discover again. With every passing day, the forest ceases to be just a backdrop and begins to reveal itself as the central force in your life, a teacher whose lessons are rarely gentle but always unforgettable. At first, the landscape seemed a collection of threats and obstacles, thorns that scratch your legs, mud that sucks at your feet, sudden storms that sweep away any sense of security you might have built. Animals moved like fleeting shadows, unpredictable and mysterious. The weather arrived as an inconvenience, and every unfamiliar plant invited doubt. But as survival pushes you into a constant, vigilant relationship with your surroundings, the world outside the cave transforms from a place to be endured into a source of knowledge, awe, and deepening respect. You begin to see patterns in the wild. The birds become your heralds, their calls hinting at changes in the weather before you ever feel the first drop of rain. The wind shifts and carries new scents, warning you of distant fire or approaching animals. You learn to watch the trees, their leaves trembling or still, the way the bark feels under your hands, the subtle differences between shelter and danger. You mark the passage of time in the length of shadows, in the blooming of flowers, in the way the air changes with the setting sun. Where once you felt only frustration at nature's indifference, you now feel humility. Every successful foraging trip, every close call with a wary animal, every cold night survived is a lesson learned. The forest becomes a vast and complicated classroom. The smallest details matter. The shape of a footprint in the mud, the glisten of dew on a leaf, the direction in which moss grows thickest on stone. Each observation is tucked away, shaping your decisions, helping you survive. The wild is not there for your convenience, and the realization lands with the weight of truth. You are not the master here, but an attentive pupil. Your relationship with animals grows more nuanced, too. The creatures you once feared become your neighbors. You study their tracks, decipher the meaning behind a distant howl or a rustle in the undergrowth. You begin to admire the fox's cunning, the patience of a hawk waiting for its moment, the ceaseless, coordinated work of ants. These animals are experts at survival, each perfectly adapted to their own niche. There is no malice in their caution, no waste in their movements. You start to see your own reflection in their struggles and successes, recognizing a shared drive for life and security. Weather, once merely a topic for idle conversation, becomes a force you study and respect. You watch the sky for hints of coming storms, learn to interpret the pressure in the air, the subtle signs of a cold front, or the building heat before a summer rain. When a sudden downpour soaks you to the skin, or a biting wind cuts through your shelter, you no longer feel singled out or unfairly challenged. Instead, you accept the lesson: preparation, observation, adaptability. The elements are not adversaries to be conquered, but powerful teachers whose rules are absolute.
Every success feels earned. Every mistake costly but instructive. You come to understand that the wild does not forgive carelessness, and that even the most basic acts, finding food, keeping dry, staying warm, require your full attention. There is no autopilot here. You are constantly tested, and every day is a new exam, the forest offering feedback with a kind of impersonal wisdom. But there are gifts too: the beauty of sunrise after a storm, the sudden appearance of wildflowers in a hidden glen, the grace of an animal crossing your path in the golden hour. These moments, brief and luminous, feel like rewards for your effort and vigilance. They instill in you a gratitude and wonder that runs deeper than words, a sense that nature is both rigorous and generous, demanding and inspiring. As your time in the wild continues, you begin to carry yourself differently: alert, receptive, quieter in your movements, and more patient in your observations. The landscape is no longer an enemy to be outsmarted, but a mentor, sometimes stern, sometimes forgiving, always truthful. And in this ongoing relationship, you discover that learning from nature is not about conquering or escaping it, but about recognizing your place within it. An endless student, grateful for every lesson, humble before the power and mystery of the world that now feels, in its way, like home. As the days in the wild string together, your mind starts to unravel itself in ways that surprise you. The constant hum of city life, schedules, notifications, social expectations, fades completely, replaced by the unbroken rhythm of the forest and the steady cycles of daylight and darkness. The change isn't just external. Something deep within begins to shift, as if the gears of your thoughts, freed from familiar grooves, finally have room to turn in new directions. Without the constant barrage of noise and information, your mind grows quieter and sharper at the same time. The simplest tasks demand real focus: gathering food, tending the fire, staying warm. At first, your inner voice runs wild with anxieties: what could go wrong, what you're missing, how far away comfort has become. But gradually, the mind settles. A different kind of thinking emerges, slower, more deliberate, less cluttered by distraction. It's in these long, silent stretches that unexpected insights appear, thoughts you never entertained in the city. There's space to revisit old memories, to reflect on moments you thought were long forgotten. The smell of moss might trigger a recollection from childhood, or the sight of an animal might spark a meditation on fear, courage, and instinct. Freed from constant input, your mind has time to arrange and examine its own contents, piecing together patterns that went unnoticed in the rush of ordinary life. You become acutely aware of the present moment in a way that's hard to describe. Each breath, each step, each sound in the dark carries new weight.
With nothing else to distract you, you notice the subtle changes in your own thinking. Problems that seemed impossible back home now appear in a new light, their solutions suddenly obvious, or sometimes entirely unimportant. The priorities of city life, status, possessions, deadlines, lose their edge. What matters now is clarity, the next meal, the next safe place to rest, the beauty of the sunlight breaking through the trees. With that clarity comes a flood of questions you've never allowed yourself to ask. What do you really need to be content? What fears have you carried for years that no longer make sense here? What parts of your old life were essential and which were only habits, routines picked up and carried without reflection? These questions echo in the silence, growing larger with each day, until they fill your thoughts as completely as the landscape fills your vision. You experience a kind of philosophical crisis, the kind that creeps in not with panic, but with quiet, steady force. If so much of what you thought was necessary can be left behind, what does that say about who you are? The gap between survival and comfort, between need and want, becomes a chasm you never noticed before. You question what it means to live well, to live wisely, to live honestly. There are moments of discomfort, even sorrow, as you realize how much energy was spent worrying about things that in this context simply do not matter. But out of this discomfort comes growth. The mind adapts, finding new ways to engage with the world. The lack of external distraction sharpens your ability to observe, to notice, to create. Evenings become times of reflection. What did you learn today? What will you try tomorrow? What lessons does the forest still have to offer? Your dreams become vivid, colored by the strangeness of your new life, sometimes visiting people and places from your past, sometimes inventing futures shaped by your present discoveries. Through it all, a sense of humility settles in. You see yourself not as the center of the world, but as a small part of something vast and intricate. The boundaries between past and future blur. What matters is this moment, this breath, this heartbeat. You realize that your mind is not a machine to be filled and emptied, but a living thing that needs space, silence, and time to evolve. And so, in the quiet isolation of the cave, your thoughts become companions, guides, and teachers. Mental evolution does not mean leaving old knowledge behind, but learning to see with new eyes, to think in new patterns, to allow yourself the freedom to change. The person who entered the wilderness is not the same as the one now watching the stars from the mouth of the cave. There is more wonder, more gratitude, and a quiet understanding that, sometimes, the best discoveries are not found in the world outside, but within your own mind. There comes a moment in the wild when the illusion of invulnerability finally shatters, replaced by a raw, intimate awareness of how fragile life can be. Out here, without the safety net of society, this understanding is no longer just an abstract thought, but a presence that lingers at the edges of every experience. Each cold wind, each growl from the dark, each strange pain in your body is a subtle reminder: nothing is guaranteed, and every heartbeat is both a gift and a gamble. In isolation, this ancient fear rises to the surface, unfiltered and relentless. The darkness outside the cave feels deeper, more alive. Your mind, no longer distracted by trivialities, begins to dwell on every possibility, rehearsing worst-case scenarios with an intensity you never knew before. You count your heartbeats, listen for irregularities, become acutely attuned to the vulnerabilities you once ignored. Every sound at night becomes a question. Is it wind, an animal, something else? Every small injury, every passing ache is examined with a new gravity. Yet within this fear, something paradoxical emerges: the overwhelming desire not just to survive, but to prevail, to carve out another day from an indifferent world. The mind, for all its anxious spirals, also rallies in defense of life. You grow more vigilant, more careful, more deliberate. Each movement is purposeful, each decision weighed for risk and reward. You learn to be gentle with yourself, to conserve energy, to anticipate needs before they become crises. This inner battle between anxiety and resilience becomes a defining feature of your days and nights. You witness yourself swinging between dread and determination, sometimes within the space of a single hour. There are moments when the fear is almost paralyzing, when the awareness of your own smallness presses so heavily that you wonder if you will ever escape it. And then, in the very next breath, you find a strength you didn't know you had, an instinctive resolve that pushes you to keep going, to adapt, to try one more time. You begin to understand why this fear exists and why it has accompanied humanity for so long. It is not just a shadow, but a teacher, compelling you to pay attention, to plan, to respect the boundaries of the possible. The desire to survive, in turn, is not just stubbornness, it is creativity, hope, the refusal to let uncertainty write the final story. You invent new solutions to old problems. You listen to your instincts, learning to distinguish real danger from imagined threat. Even your dreams begin to reflect this shift, less often haunted by failure, more often driven by small victories, glimpses of safety, flashes of warmth in the midst of hardship. Psychological breakthroughs come quietly, sometimes unexpectedly. You learn that the fear never truly leaves. Instead, it becomes manageable, a companion you can acknowledge but not obey. You practice acceptance, letting the reality of uncertainty coexist with the determination to endure. You realize that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward in spite of it, to continue building your small world even when the outcome is unknown. And through this constant balancing act, something else blossoms, a deep, almost defiant gratitude. Each dawn feels miraculous, each meal a celebration, each untroubled night a blessing. You find yourself cherishing the smallest moments of safety and comfort, the warmth of the fire, the taste of clean water, the sound of your own heartbeat steady in the quiet dark. In this place, stripped of pretense and distraction, you come to terms with the oldest of all fears, and in doing so, discover a new kind of hope. Survival becomes more than mere endurance. It becomes a statement of faith in your own resourcefulness, a quiet promise that, for as long as you can, you will keep going, keep learning, keep living, no matter what the wild may bring. With time, what once felt foreign and uncomfortable in the wild slowly begins to transform into routine, even comfort. The habits that emerge here are not just adaptations, they become second nature, woven into your days until you can hardly remember what it was like to live any other way. At first, you cling to fragments of your old world, but as the rhythm of cave life settles in, those old routines are replaced by new rituals born of necessity and discovery. You rise with the sun, not because of an alarm, but because your body now knows the difference between true night and the promise of morning. The fire's maintenance, once a desperate struggle, becomes a meditative act, feeding the embers, arranging wood just so, coaxing warmth from the coals. Every gesture is deliberate, each action an affirmation that you have learned how to shape your world with your own hands. Your first waking thoughts are of water, food, and the weather. These priorities define your sense of time, anchoring you to the present in a way nothing ever has before. Eating, too, becomes ritual. You no longer eat by the clock or out of boredom, but when hunger arrives, honest and real. Each meal is a process, gathering, preparing, sometimes sharing with the imagined company of the fire or the forest itself. The careful chewing of roots or fish, the slow savoring of berries or nuts carries a kind of gratitude. You catch yourself offering silent thanks, not just for the food, but for the lessons learned in finding and preparing it, for the patience the wild demands. You develop new senses of cleanliness and order, guided by the logic of survival. You rinse your hands and face in the cold stream, clean wounds with instinct and care, keep your corner of the cave organized to avoid accidents in the dark. Each of these small acts feels meaningful, a way to assert a measure of control in a world that is never truly tamed. Gradually, your sense of value shifts. Things that once seemed essential, screens, endless choices that chase for novelty, fade into the background, almost irrelevant. Instead, the weight of a well-shaped tool, the comfort of a dry shelter, the companionship of routine take on profound significance. Achievements are measured not in numbers or possessions, but in the mastery of simple acts, lighting a fire on the first try, reading the signs of coming rain in the sky, recognizing the call of a familiar bird at dawn. More surprising, perhaps, is how you start to converse with the world around you. Not with words, but with attention, gestures, and a kind of quiet reverence. You find yourself greeting the sunrise, listening for the subtle language of wind and water, offering a word of encouragement to the forest as if it can hear you. The boundaries between yourself and nature blur. You are no longer a visitor, but a participant in a conversation as old as the world itself. The rituals and habits you acquire here are not simply responses to hardship. They are acts of belonging, each one an affirmation that you have learned to live according to the wild's terms. There is satisfaction in small tasks, comfort in repetition, a growing confidence in your own adaptability. Even solitude feels different now, less an absence and more a presence, filled with the quiet companionship of wind, stone, and fire. You suspect that these changes are not temporary. The wild has rewritten your instincts, calibrated your senses, shown you the value of patience and respect. You know that, should you return to the world you left behind, echoes of this life will remain. You will seek simplicity, find comfort in routine, measure your days by different standards. The old anxieties and ambitions will seem smaller, outshined by the quiet pride of having learned how to thrive, however briefly, on nature's terms. By the end, you are no longer just someone surviving a week in the wild. You are someone changed, shaped by every new habit and every old fear overcome. A person who now speaks the language of the earth, if only in a whisper, and finds peace in places where others might see only challenge. As the days in the cave begin to blur into each other, the approach of the end, of a return to civilization, becomes a weight in your thoughts. You count the days less out of impatience and more out of curiosity, quietly surprised by how reluctant you are to mark the last morning. What started as an experiment, an act of willpower, has turned into a kind of life, with its own logic and peace. The idea of leaving the cave, of stepping away from the slow rhythms of the wild, is both a promise of relief and a quiet sorrow. The first signs of the coming transition appear long before you begin to pack. There's the awareness that each sunrise is one fewer to be greeted by the cave's familiar shadow. Each fire, one of the last to be built with your now skilled hands. You find yourself savoring the rough comforts, the cool bite of water in the morning, the satisfaction of a perfectly constructed tool, the silence that has grown not just tolerable, but precious. The wild, with all its tests and privations, has become more than just a backdrop. It has become a kind of home.
Yet the call of civilization is impossible to ignore. You dream of hot showers, of soft beds, of meals that do not require foraging or patience. There is the pull of companionship, the promise of real voices, laughter, the simple comfort of being seen and understood. The cave, once an intimidating stranger, is now a friend whose company you are preparing to leave. The anticipation of returning brings flashes of joy, but also a strange sense of loss, a knowledge that something will be left behind, something that can't be carried back no matter how carefully you prepare. Packing to leave is a ritual unlike any other. Every item you gathered, every tool you shaped, is handled with a kind of reverence. You remember the day you found that perfect stone, the morning you finally read the weather in the shape of the clouds, the first meal that tasted like victory. Each object carries a memory, a lesson, a struggle, a triumph. You consider leaving something behind, a small token for the next wanderer, a mark that says you were here and learned something that changed you. The walk away from the cave is different from your arrival. The path you once followed with nervous anticipation is now familiar underfoot. The landscape no longer a world of threats, but a map of discoveries. Each sound, each scent is known to you now. You have learned their meanings, responded to their challenges. With every step, a duality forms inside you. The old world drawing you forward, the new one asking you to linger just a little longer. As the outlines of civilization begin to reappear, so does the noise. Distant engines, the hum of power lines, the sharp edges of voices. The world you left feels both alien and intimate. You notice things you never did before. The way light falls on concrete, the symphony of smells in a market, the sheer abundance and ease of everything. Relief washes over you, undeniable and comforting. But so does a strange nostalgia. What you have gained is obvious: security, comfort, connection. What you have lost is harder to define, but no less real. A simplicity, a sense of raw achievement, the peace that came from living at the pace of sun and wind. In those first days back, the cave lingers in your senses. You reach for old habits, surprised at how out of place they feel. Conversations seem rushed, choices overwhelming. There is gratitude, certainly, but also a subtle ache for the quiet competence you built, for the rituals that ordered your days and the wildness that shaped your thoughts. You realize in the end that both worlds are part of you now, the one of comfort and plenty and the one of challenge and discovery. The choice to return is not a betrayal of the wild, but a renewal of perspective, a promise to carry what you learned into every ordinary day. As you move through the busy world, you hold on to the quiet certainty that, should you need it, the lessons of the cave and the wisdom of the forest will always be there, waiting at the edge of memory, ready to guide you home again. Emerging from the cave, you find yourself quietly changed in ways both obvious and impossible to name. The experience is not just a collection of memories or a story to tell, but a subtle rewriting of your inner landscape, a transformation that echoes in your thoughts, your habits, and the way you look at the world. The boundaries between the person who first stepped into the wild and the one who now returns are porous and shifting, but the difference is undeniable. There is a new weight to your steps, a quietness to your gaze, a patience in your hands. You realize quickly that your relationship with comfort and difficulty has been fundamentally altered. What once felt unbearable now seems manageable. The cold, the hunger, the fatigue, all stripped of their power to intimidate. You know yourself as someone capable of enduring, of solving problems with whatever is at hand, of finding satisfaction in the simplest of victories. Fear, so sharp and vivid in the early days, has faded into a kind of respect, a knowledge that uncertainty is always waiting, but that it can be faced with calm and ingenuity. Your view of the world itself has shifted too. The trees and stones, the wind and water, are no longer scenery, but living participants in your story. There is a sense of partnership, a gratitude for the silent generosity of nature, and a new humility before its challenges. The endless demands and distractions of ordinary life seem less urgent now, outshined by the knowledge that meaning is not measured by speed or achievement, but by presence, by careful attention, by the act of being truly awake to your own experience. Material things have lost much of their hold. The endless stream of possessions and options once promised happiness, but now you know that contentment can be built from far less. Each object you touch is weighed for its necessity, its purpose. You find yourself drawn to simplicity, to the quiet confidence of enough. The wild has taught you to recognize the difference between abundance and excess, between craving and genuine need. You carry with you a deeper sense of gratitude for warmth, for clean water, for the kindness of others, and for your own persistence. The frustrations and failures of your week in the cave are no longer sources of regret, but building blocks for resilience. The scars and memories alike have become proof of your growth, reminders that the journey was not just through a landscape, but through the tangled terrain of your own mind and spirit. Dreams for the future take on new shapes. The ambition to accumulate and hurry is replaced by a desire for experience, for presence, for connection. You wonder how to bring the clarity of the wild into the noise of everyday life, how to keep the lessons close even when the world tries to pull you back into old patterns. You find yourself longing for more moments of quiet, more honest effort, more time spent in the company of trees, sky, and silence. The most unexpected change is in your sense of self. Where once you looked outward for validation or meaning, now you find it within, a steady flame fed by patience and discovery. There is an acceptance of imperfection, a kindness toward your own struggles, and a new appreciation for the unpredictability of living. You are no longer defined by routine or expectation, but by the adaptability and curiosity that the cave drew out of you. As you move forward, you do so with gratitude for the challenge, for the discomfort, for the beauty and the hardship alike. The cave is behind you, but its lessons echo in every step. You know now that true change is never just about where you are, but about how you meet each moment, whether in the wild or the city, with open eyes, with courage, and with the hope that every experience, no matter how difficult, can be the beginning of something new.